Good evening. Tonight's board meeting begins with our annual recognition of the district's National Merit Scholars. I would like to welcome this year's honorees and family members who are with us in the audience and congratulate our students on their remarkable efforts. There are few school systems in America that can boast a record of student achievement comparable to ours. Most school districts would consider 4 or 5 National Merit honorees a tremendous success. Tonight, I'm proud to remind our community once again that Lower Merion School District is not most school districts. Ladies and gentlemen, a remarkable total of 63 Lmsd seniors have earned recognition through the 2014 National Merit Scholarship Competition. This list includes 21 National Merit semifinalists, 40 commended students, and 2 National Achievement Outstanding participants. This is one of the largest groups of National Merit honorees on the East Coast. These talented students were identified through exceptional academic achievement and high scores on the PSAT, which they took as juniors last year. This year's class includes one of the largest groups of commended students in district history. 9 students earned a perfect score on at least one section of the PSAT. Approximately 1.5 million juniors in over 21,000 high schools entered this year's National Merit Program by taking the 2012 PSAT. Fewer than 16,000 students, less than 1% of all U.S. high school students, achieved the status of National Merit semifinalist. Commended students are placed among the top 5% of all entrants. Those deemed scholars must also achieve a GPA of 3.5 or higher. The National Achievement Program recognizes the outstanding performance of the top Black Americans participating in the qualifying test. Of the more than 160,000 students who entered the National Achievement Program each year, over 4,700 are honored. A group of about 3,100 outstanding participants are referred to colleges for their potential academic success. A smaller group of about 1,600 are named semifinalists and have an opportunity to advance in the competition for National Achievement Scholarship. Based on your achievements, you will have all qualified for recognition among an elite group of students in our country. On behalf of the entire school community and the Board of School Directors, I want to thank you and salute you for your hard work and dedication and your commitment to success. You are a great example for your peers, and you make us very proud. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Eveslog, the principal of Harriton High School, to introduce individual National Merit honorees from Harriton. And students, when your name is called, please come forward and receive the District Award Certificate from the President of the Board of School Directors, Dr. Melissa Gilbert.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate these distinguished students. This is quite a remarkable accomplishment of academic success. I applaud your success and admire your dedication to academic excellence. Students, you should be extremely proud of not only your academic performance, but also your ability to manage your success with such balance in your life. So many of you are involved in such a wide range of positive elements of our school community and beyond. It makes your accomplishments all that more special, and most importantly, speaks to your character. So please take great pride in your achievement, as we do, and accept my congratulations and good wishes. As I call your name, please come forward to receive a certificate. Jeffrey Breitling. Alexander Harriet. Jason Herman. Seth Carpel. Saranya Karana. Victoria Marks. Eleanor Mays. Catherine Pisani. Allison Schwartz. Stephen Siciliano. Kyle Swartley. Elizaveta Tashenko. Jonathan Zauberman. Jeffrey Robinson. Andrew Frederick. Walden Pimentel. Gideon Haber. And Richard Ho. I'll have a certificate for you shortly, Xavier. I apologize, but Xavier Zambrana. Thank you. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Sean Hughes.
Good job for switching sides. Happy Monday, everybody. As Dr. McGinley and Mr. Evelzog so elegantly commented, this is an excellent achievement, students, in your academic careers, and I'm honored to be here tonight and recognize your accomplishments. But specifically, students, you should be extremely proud of this designation as it shows that you have exceptional academic potentials. I am sure you realize that achievements such as this one are made possible through the supports and efforts of many people, such as, although not the final effort is totally yours, but it would be good character for you to remember your teachers and your coaches, and importantly, your parents in all of this, and thank them, especially when you leave here tonight or when next time you see them. So they take great pride in your achievements and your accomplishments as well, and don't ever forget that. So make sure you do thank them tonight. So again, please accept my congratulations and good wishes. And as I call your name, please come forward to receive your certificate. Ariel Anderer. David Bloom. William Buckman. William Chen. Lillian Eisner. Allison Epstein. Jack Garton. Tangda Gu. Tanya Halleck. Joan He. Oliver Henry. Brian Hirsch. Jacob Kane. Robert Katz. Sarah Kerman. Max Maroney. Madeline McFarland. Joseph McGowan. Olumawa Olujungabe. Haruyi Sun. Robert Warshaw. Wenyan Wu. Noah Blodgett. Andrew Skolnick. Arman Hassan. Pictures?
So I think we should follow Mr. Yu's advice and give a big round of applause for all the parents, for all the help and assistance. All of us look forward to hearing about future success, college admissions, success in college and beyond, and we wish you great health and happiness moving forward in life. And if we don't see you face to face before, we'll see you at graduation, not that far away. So, oh, if anyone wants to take a photo of the group, now's the time to do it, and then we're going to dismiss the group, and then we'll move on with the other items we have in our board meeting. So please feel free to come forward right now and get a picture of people who want to really get off the stage very quickly.
Squeeze in. Oh, mood lighting.
The next part of our agenda is to take, no. The next part of our agenda is to take audience recognition on agenda items only, but we've received a request from two of our students who were just honored up here who would like to address the board. And so because they're students, we're going to make an exception to allow them to speak on a non-agenda item. So would you gentlemen come sign in with Ms. LePere. You have to write your name, and then you tell us your name, and you have 3 minutes, please. And the area where you live.
To the board. My name is Billy Buckman.
I'm Jack Garton.
We're both captains of the Lower Merion football team. A few weeks ago, we played a night game under the lights against Pencrest. There were over 1,000 students in attendance, and it was probably the highlight of my high school career to date. It was the greatest feeling to run out onto the field with the students cheering at our back, and though we lost the game, I think that it was a positive step forward for the program and for the student body as a whole.
Yeah, I can just speak to the, what playing under the lights meant to us. It's something that we've never had our whole careers in high school, and something we'll never have for the rest of our lives, and something that we're grateful to play the second game ever, Lower Merion under the lights, and even losing 48-0, just having, when we were losing 48-0, having a whole crowd of our fellow students cheer for us really meant a lot and made it very emotional for me at least. And the success of the night, what it meant to us, and how great it was for all of our fellow students, and the fact that it went off without a hitch, without an incident, without any police reports filed. We would like to propose that we know that Harriton has lights allowed for their night games, and we would like to propose that we have the same.
Again, we're just humbly requesting that since the district does provide the money for Harriton to rent lights for their entire football season for Friday night games, that they do the same for the Lower Merion football program. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and congratulations once again on your achievements, and it's clear that you're both very well-rounded as well. So we will take that under advisement. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come speak on an agenda item? If you would, please come sign in with Ms. LePere. Okay, Seeing that no one would like to speak at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. McGinley.
Thank you. Just one announcement before we do our report this evening. Both of our high schools have qualified for a gold level recognition under the LEAD program, which is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And it was a quest of the Board of School Directors and the school district to make sure that we were being environmentally responsible when we built this high school and Harriton High School, and we're really delighted that they've qualified and they've been recognized by the U.S. Department of Education and other agencies more locally. But we are having a ceremony on October 24th at 1 p.m. at Harriton to celebrate the gold level recognition and to present the LEED certificates to both of the buildings. And we just want to make the public aware of that. There is information that is or will be on our website very shortly, and we are pleased to have made it to the gold level. It took a lot of hard work in the planning stages. During construction, there were additional requirements placed on the school district in terms of recycling materials, and even in the operation of the buildings in the last couple of years, there were a lot of operational issues that we needed to adjust and work on in order to achieve the savings that we wish to achieve in terms of dollars, but also in terms of resources and energy. So we're pleased to have done. Our people in operations have done a great job following through and fine-tuning the buildings so that we are using energy efficiently and managing resources in a way that we never could have with the technology in our older buildings. So it's nice to be able to pause and celebrate that. And the other piece of this is that there is a clear tie to environmental education in our buildings in terms of how our buildings operate. And so it's great for our high school students to see science in action and to see social activism at its finest. And we're pleased to include our students in this event on October 24th. So I'm hoping that some members of the Board of School Directors will be able to join us that afternoon, and members of the public are welcome there as well. And if you're a member of the public, please bring a picture ID, because it's our new standard in security. So I'm going to turn the educational portion over to Dr. Marseille, our assistant superintendent. Oh, you're down here. I was looking for you over there. And he will introduce Mr. Cody, who will be doing the presentation. Dr. Marseille?
Thank you. We have a brief presentation to the board regarding our performance profile. February of last school year, I presented to you the Pennsylvania Department of Education's new system in terms of the metrics they're going to use to score schools, for lack of a better term. And last week we received those profiles for each of our buildings, and Mr. Cody, our supervisor of instructional technology and data analysis, will be walking through a brief presentation exactly what those scores look like and what they mean. So without further ado, Mr. Cody.
Thank you, Dr. Marseille. Good evening, Board. This evening, I'd like to just present to you the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile for the Lower Merion School District, take a brief snapshot of the PVOS value-added growth for the district, as well as performance diagnostics in PVOS, and show you a few slides in relationship to a cohort analysis looking at grades 3 through 5 over time and grades 5 through 8 over time in both subjects of math and reading. So the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile, which replaced the AYP targets for the district, we know that all schools are in the top 2 tiers of the scoring. One school is over the 100% scoring, 100-point total score. We have 4 schools that are above the 90-point scale, and 3 schools that are in the middle to high 80 score range. Both middle schools will be projected to be in the 90 score range, and I'll explain a little bit more in the presentation as to why the middle schools do not yet have a performance profile score. And there's a quote here that I'd like to reference, and we've seen the example here tonight in terms of our National Merit Scholars and our 2 student athletes who presented, that not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And the reason why we're saying that is we have to report out scores and the importance of those particular scores, but there's much more positive things going on in the Lower Merion School District other than just scores that need to be reported out on the state or by the state. We're very proud of the students that perform each and every day academically in the classroom and are involved in a number of extracurricular activities in the arts and in sports. We truly believe that we create well-rounded students here in the Lower Merion School District. This is a snapshot of the Pennsylvania School Performance landing page. The link that you see at the top, paschoolperformance.org, is the public site in which you can access this school data. When you're accessing this particular site, at the very bottom of the screen in the yellow box, you would need to select a role, whether you're a school administrator, a parent, a teacher, in order to provide feedback to the state throughout this particular portal, and simply click the Get Started icon. On this particular page, you will be able to navigate to a map to select a particular county that you want to look at. This is just not Lower Merion. This shows all the school districts across the Commonwealth. So understanding academic performance score, the Educator Effectiveness System, the Act 82 of 2012, is designed to evaluate our teachers, and this year beginning to look at the evaluation of building level administrators. And the building level data is used to develop a school academic performance, and it comprises 15% of each teacher and principal's evaluation, beginning with the teacher rating in the 2013-14 year and the principals in the 14-15 year. The score for the school is based upon indicators that define high performance, and many elements come together in order to rate our particular school. The first three areas represent 50% of the school performance academic score. Measure number one, indicators of academic achievement, which includes the PSSAs, the Keystone Exam performance, and industry standards of competencies, such as the SAT and ACT college readiness benchmarks. The second indicator is closing the achievement gap for all students. And the third indicator is closing the achievement gap for historically underperforming students. And this group of historically underperforming students are categorized of students that are economically disadvantaged, IEP, and your English language learners. The second category, which represents 40% of the school academic performance indicator, is the PVOS academic growth. This is the measure of school's impact on the year's progress of students from year to year, and we'll be able to take a look at that shortly in some future slides. The other academic indicator represents 10% of the academic school score, and other indicators factor in student achievement, graduation rate, promotion rate, attendance rate, and measures of that sort. Schools also have the opportunity to earn extra credit points via extra credit for advanced achievement based on advanced performance on state and industry assessments, as well as students that are earning 3 or higher on the advanced placement exams. So when you log in and select your school, this is what your landing page would look like. This particular page has a landing page that comprises of 4 different sections. The first section that you see is the building level academic score. Here you can view calculations for the building score and how the scores were determined for each particular building. The second section on the screen is the federal accountability designation. This identifies schools that are Title I. You can click on the measures and descriptions to view more data and explanations for this particular accountability designation. The third section is the academic performance fast facts, which shares demographic data about the school, such as grade levels tested within the school and test participation rates. Our fourth section, which carries the most data in the particular section, are your academic performance indicators that were discussed in the previous screen. The indicators of academic performance, the indicators of closing the achievement gap for all students and historically underperforming students, the indicators of PVOS and growth, and the other academic indicators. This is a snapshot of our schools. You'll notice here that Bala-Cynwyd Middle School and Welsh Valley Middle School do not yet have a score. This is indicative of a correction measure at the state level for coding on the Keystone exam, where students needed to code in a particular bubble to designate that they were identified in a Keystone-related course. And across the Commonwealth, many school districts noticed errors within this factor. So for a short time, districts had the opportunity to suppress scores. Lower Merion School District decided to suppress the scores to make sure that our middle schools were reflecting accurate data and not putting inaccurate data in front of the board or the public. This data will be updated and corrected. We are in communications with the state, and these particular profiles would be updated in January of 2014. We are anticipating that the middle schools will be scoring in the 90-point range with these particular measures. Moving on to PVAS, we see that there is a value-added data at the 6th grade math level at both the middle schools, which indicates evidence that both middle schools did not meet the standard of growth for 2013. We know that Marion Elementary School demonstrated significant evidence that the school exceeded the standard for PA academic growth in all content areas, and data indicates moderate evidence that the schools exceeded the standard for PA academic growth and/or evidence that the schools met academic growth across the entire district. This is a snapshot of our school district in the areas of math, reading, writing, and science for our PVAS value-added growth. Last year, we talked briefly about the color indicators. We are, as a district, looking at the colors of dark blue, light blue, or green. Green indicating that the school met the PA academic growth measures, and blue showing evidence that it was either moderately or significantly increased. We do notice here that there are some areas of growth that need to be pressed upon within our particular district, where schools are showing moderate evidence of not meeting the standards of growth, as well as significant evidence. This particular slide shows the academic performance diagnostics summaries, and based on the yellows and reds that we saw on the previous screens, although we have students that are achieving at high levels of advanced and proficient levels, these are the areas that they are not growing fast enough or showing significant growth. In this particular screen, it's the pink areas that reflected the yellow or the red on the previous screen of the value added. In our cohort analysis, our summary statements show an average of 23% achievement gap in 5th grade math cohort over the last 4 years, and we've narrowed our achievement gap in the areas of reading by to 3% for 5th grade. This cohort achievement gap was at a 56% gap in 2010 when students were in 6th grade. This is a particular screenshot showing that particular achievement gap starting in 5th grade, or 3rd grade, I'm sorry, in 2010-11 among our Caucasian population and our African American population. We've seen to narrow that gap where it was even in 2011-12 while these 3rd graders became 4th graders, and that gap grew again in the 12-13 school year to 13%. So we had a 3% increase from the time students were 3rd graders to 5th graders. Taking a look at the cohort of students in math starting in 5th grade. So in 2009, we look at 5th graders, and in 2012, we look at the same group of students measured through 8th grade. We see that there's a 2% gap, and over the course of these 4 years, there's a 23% average of this particular cohort gap. There are highlights that we're moving to. In reading, we take a look at our cohort population of 12% between our two subgroups identified. That gap shrank by 1% the following year and begins to grow again as we become 5th graders with the same group of students. This is a slide that we are very proud to see starting in 5th grade. We've taken the gap from 23% as 5th graders and closed that gap to 3% by the time these students were 8th grade. Same amount of students same students across the cohort of these particular 4 years. Our Lower Merion School District is represented in the red, and the green below is the state. The question during a curriculum committee of the board was, how are we relative to the state? Right now, we are exponentially closing the achievement gap in the Lower Merion School District between African American students and white students at a much better rate than what the state is. This time, I thank you for the presentation, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I'm looking at the data. Are there any questions from board members? Marissa and then Lynn.
Just two questions on page 5, the PVOS value added. You have color coding for the middle schools, but I thought, how can we know that yet if we don't have the data yet?
The middle schools that we see here for Algebra 1, they were pre-released items because Bala Cynwyd actually had a PVOS score initially. So when we suppressed, we wanted to suppress both middle schools, so this was a quick snapshot of the algebra in Bala Cynwyd. And Welsh Valley, you could see there's a data correction. So what we did is we pulled both of those schools offline to validate that both middle schools actually met. We're anticipating that the Welsh Valley will also be the dark blue.
Okay, but the grade 6 is still red.
The grade 6, at the top, the value added is representative of the math PSSA. The bottom is relative to the Keystone. So there's two separate measures because we do have students 6th, 7th, and 8th grade taking the Keystone exams, but we also have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade also taking PSSA.
Got it. And then
So
just
the top scale, 6th grade, is PSSA only.
Got it. Okay. And then just one quick question. So if you have a score of over 100, that means we got some of that extra credit? Is that how you get over 100?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for shedding some light on this information and sharing it with us. I guess I have a couple of questions. The math data for 6th grade, can you refresh my recollection, is that before or after we changed the math program?
This would be last year's math data, so performance indicators based on last year's PSSA. So if
It's after. It's the current math programs that we have.
current math programs that we have right now.
And what are we doing as a district to make sure that we don't have, that we're resolving the deficiencies there and at Cynwyd in grade 5? I guess are my first questions.
So
let me just talk about Cynwyd grade 5 writing. This is a growth indicator. This is not overall writing achievement. So we are and have been concerned with elementary school writing, and we have a number of supports and programs in place. All of those same supports and programs are in place at all of the schools. Some of the schools, did extremely well, Merion, for example. So we are going back. Cynwyd this year rework their schedule for writing because, as it turned out, and I know we spent a lot of time last spring talking about elementary schedules, writing time at Cynwyd was truncated into really small bits throughout the week, and there wasn't a dedicated time, and so they have reworked their schedule, and they've also sent a team of people over to Merion to look at their approach. It's the same materials, it's the same programmatic structure, but it was being implemented differently in the two locations. So there is some direct corrective action being taken at Cynwyd.
And to further elaborate on that, like Dr. McGinley was saying, this is actually growth. So when we look at the PVOS indicators in terms of Cynwyd writing, there were 77 students that were projected to be at proficient levels or advanced levels of writing based on previous year testing. And because students did not achieve at that proficient level or scaled score within those particular levels or fell short of that, that has a negative growth pattern. Still achieving very well and very high, but just not meeting the expected level of growth in a year for that matter.
Thank you for explaining that about Cynwyd and the writing program. What are we doing though about the 6th grade math scores and math performance to improve that?
We've, as a K through 12 team, we've had conversations that that gap didn't occur at that grade level, and that there was some sequencing that needs to be done in terms of where that happening. We've had 2 meetings this year with our K through 12 team looking at that 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade gap where it seems to be the largest, and trying to put in really meaningful interventions specifically, because what you're seeing here is a big snapshot. The finer detail is about going into each and every student's score and finding out what were those assessment anchors that those students did not score well in, and how are we addressing those moving forward. Very similar to what Mr. Cody said earlier, that there were a number of students that were projected to score much higher than they did. And that's further analysis in terms of why that didn't take place. And then students who are struggling, how do we support them or better support them with the specifics they need. So we are aggressively looking at that 4th, 5th, 6th cohort.
And you don't have to tell me what they are now, but have we identified particular competencies or subjects where we need to do a better job, conveying information or making sure that it's comprehended and applied?
Yes, the eligible content and the standards are broken down, and we have the skills that every student scored in, whether it was basic, below basic, proficient, or advanced, to help guide teachers in terms of, well, what do we do to provide enrichment, and where are those skills where we need interventions. So we do have those.
Thank you. I'm assuming, based on what you said, that we're taking action to make sure that what we are seeing is being applied to a corrective plan to change how we're doing education on those areas.
Absolutely.
Terrific. I have one more question. Looking at the, on page 6 of our handout, the 2010 to 13 cohort analysis for the achievement gap. I'm really pleased to see that we are making progress in closing the 5th grade reading cohort achievement gap. But if I'm understanding this correctly, and I'm not sure that I am, if we've achieved a 3% improvement, that still leaves a 53% gap, which seems quite significant and something that we need to really focus on. If I'm reading that correctly, is that right?
It's that bullet point refers to the last chart in the presentation, this chart that shows that in reading with the same cohort of students, that we have a gap of 3%. It's not a 3% improvement. The gap is a 3% gap.
It's much better
That's
than
much
the way
better.
I was reading it.
This is good news. The other side is not good news on the math side.
So the actual analysis says that we've gone from a gap of 56% to a gap of 3%, closing the gap by 53%.
No, I think the highest that the gap was for this group is it 36?
Was it 36?
36%.
So what this slide should say is that in 2010-11 we had a performance of this particular cohort at 56% proficiency, and in 2012-13 we had a proficiency percentage of 94%. So my mistake on the misinterpretation of that slide.
That's much clearer. I didn't understand that at all from
my
the bullet
apologies.
point. No, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cody, for the presentation. I think Dr. Marseille answered part of my question, but I wanted to actually follow up in terms of projected growth. How are we communicating? I know we're having conversations with teachers in terms of meaningful interventions and the kinds of things that can be done based on the data. What's our plan for communicating that information to parents and guardians?
That's a great question. Something that I don't have an answer for right now because I'm not communicating that. directly with parents. But what I am doing is having conversations with teachers and achievement teams and showing specifically, and if we focus on this slide of our academic performance, where we see much of our lack of growth or not strong enough growth is with students in the proficient and advanced categories. So my summaries to the teachers and administrators in the building is take a very good hard look at students in these particular categories, because we often see at times, although students are performing at a proficient or advanced level overall and performing well, we do see anchors or reporting categories where there needs to be work. Students that are achieving at basic or below basic in specific categories. We see that in 8th grade, we see that in 11th grade, and if we back map, we can see that they still had those deficiencies in early elementary school. So we're starting very early now, being very critical of that analysis, and asking teachers to be able to share these types of reports with parents. So I am encouraging that with students or teachers. And teachers are asking the questions now, who's sharing this with parents and how are we sharing it with parents? I think that's a communication at the building level through achievement teams that they get that message out.
Dr. Van Lynch, if I can jump in on that question. I think one of the relatively new data conversation around PVOS growth, I think that with Mr. Cody's arrival, we've been a lot more intentful in terms of providing professional development for teachers in understanding the data, and then coming up with a common language in how to articulate and report that out. So the next steps is exactly your question. How do we begin that dialogue with parents, and how do teachers communicate that? So that is a process that our data teams are working to better develop.
I just want to say thank you for the report, and Dr. Van Lynch, that was one of the things that I was going to ask, but I also, in your coming together with your team and what can be done to improve, even with the parents, don't forget the children. They could probably tell you some of the things that they're having challenges with, and sometimes we get so academic that we're pulling the team together, and we're not seeing the trees in the forest. So don't forget our children.
Great point. Great point. I think it's very important that teachers communicate results with students through teacher-student conferences on their reports as well. Point well made. Thank you.
And that actually relates to my question. There's a lot here. So we see this graph. I'm looking at the top set of measurements on page 5, and you could say this about almost any page. There's a lot of information there that's not stated. So we talked about Kinwood a couple minutes ago, and it's not that Kinwood is necessarily underachieving, it's just that it lacked sufficient growth. It lacked growth relative to the projected growth. There's so much in that you haven't talked about tonight. My first question is, do we buy into the whole set of measurements that are that are handed down to us by the state? Do we agree that these are good measures, that they're fair, they're valid? Do you have any thoughts on that? I know we're required to follow this and report, right, but do we think that they're good measures or not?
We think that the writing assessment is actually a decent writing assessment, and so we're disappointed that the one school's growth is not what it should be, but we don't really challenge what's tested. In terms of the PVOS reading and math tests, because the design of the test is inconsistent in terms of emphasis, meaning one year there might be 3 items for a particular set of skills, and the next year there might be 1 or 5, it's hard sometimes to kind of hit a moving target. And so it's not, it's much harder to plan curricular issues around the PSSA results, which is why we do other assessments embedded in our program and other independent assessments so we can get a more consistent picture of the program. But if you just stay on that slide, in the Kinwood example, the writing example, it shows that our schools did well with writing if you look at their overall scores. Kinwood's growth was not what it should be. It's the outlier among the other elementary schools. And so we need to work with Kinwood about the implementation side of that work, the instructional practice side of that work. In the other example, where we have both of our middle schools not growing the group adequately in 6th grade, that's clearly a program issue. It's not necessarily only a 6th grade program issue, as Dr. Marseille said. It's a 3, 4, 5, 6th grade issue. And we've got to be more clear about the body of work that's tested in 6th grade so that we're moving kids up. So, if it was one of the 2, we'd be having a different conversation. One of the 6, we're having a different conversation. But when you get two red bars on that chart, that really makes us go, uh-oh, and go back and look at the scope and sequence of the program leading up to 6th grade. But in terms of the overall thing about PVAS, we would have better results on the PVAS exams and other assessments if we had more instructional time in elementary school and only had the PVAS every few years rather than every single year, because it takes a month of instruction out of the calendar. So do I buy into that? No, I don't buy into that at all. I think it's a huge waste of time and resources, and that we would do better in grades 4 and 5 having a full month of instruction.
Why do you lose an entire month?
What's that?
Why do you lose?
Just in terms of the organization, in terms of the impact on the month with doing the planning for the testing, the implementation of the testing over a series of days, the testing for kids that are absent and miss parts of it, and then sending the results back, it eats up nearly a month. And there's usually also spring break in that time period. So it could be 3 weeks would be a more fair assessment of what we're actually doing, but it just changes the nature. And originally it was 3, 5, 8, and 11 because that met the federal requirements. Then it became 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. And we could certainly plan our instruction thoroughly and well, given the assessments that are embedded in our programs, the other periodic assessments that we choose to use as a district, that we see as more consistent than the PSSA, less intrusive than the PSSA, if we did not have that test every single year. So if we didn't have it in 6 and 7, and we didn't have it in 4, and we just had 5, 8, and 11, we'd be better off instructionally.
Okay. So I want to ask another question about the gap, the achievement gap, but I think communication-wise, it would be great to communicate this out, but I think we have a fairly heavy burden to communicate what this all means. When you're getting in touch with a parent at a meeting, a teacher-parent meeting, a letter, there's just a lot here to explain. So moving to the achievement gap.
Well, I think one of the core messages amongst all of this is that there's an expectation that wherever a child is today, that the school district is responsible for helping them grow in their skills so they could be in the next level or the next category of achievement or progress within that category of achievement. So that's not a bad message to say, if you look at the next slide, Brian, can you switch that? And you say, there's certain places where the advanced group isn't growing fast enough. So we've got kids that are proficient, not moving to advanced. We have kids who are advanced and they're probably earning an A as a grade for the class. But we have kids that are advanced, but maybe they're not moving up within that advanced category each year. And that's not a bad idea to attend to that.
Yeah, we talked about this at length in February. Conceptually, it's fantastic because you're not just looking at a static number or grade, you're looking at movement. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. How much is each student advancing? Of course, these are overall grade measures, not individual student measures, but what matters is underneath these things. But I think they're great things as long as the measures are fair and valid and it makes sense to our educators, and it's helpful, not hurtful. And I guess you just identified the time issue. It would be great to fix that, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. But I think it's terrific. So let me move on to the...
it could easily happen. People need to make sure that this is a question that's asked of anybody who's running for governor. Aside from the funding issues, there's this over-testing, over-measuring issue that gets in the way of quality education. And so anyone who becomes the governor this time around, or the new governor could have an epiphany. This governor could have an ephany. that's a question to ask when people are campaigning, because the governor's office controls a lot of educational policy.
Yeah, because you commented, I would say the opposite. I would think that, so these are now here, they're new, give them a couple years. I think the initial push would have to come from teachers and administrators educating the world why they're great tests, the information is wonderful, but it's just too much, and here's why. And then you build the political support. That's what I would say. And I think maybe after all this accountability politics passes over, you can take a hard look at it from an academic perspective and then make a convincing argument, God knows, right through the Department of Education of Pennsylvania, at least for this state, and maybe modify the schedule to make it less burdensome on education. It's a discussion we can have another time. So in looking at the achievement gap graphs, obviously the last one is terrific. The gap is not completely eliminated, but it's a very small gap relative to pretty much anything we've seen in a while. But can you comment on the remaining significant gaps in, you look at math cohort 2011 to 13, it was at one point almost negligible. And then, unfortunately, the next year it grows in the double digits. You look at math 2010 to 13 cohort achievement gap. It kind of meandered. It was at 30, drops to 21. Maybe it stays consistent at 22, more or less. And then you have a fairly significant growth in reading between 2011, 2012, and 2012 to 13. What are our thoughts on that? And can we achieve the same improvement in those areas and others that we did in the cohort achievement, the 2010 to 13 reading achievement gap?
So obviously we're disappointed in those results where it is staying about the same or widening. The difference in these tables is one's 3, 4, 5 gap, and that's the first one. Obviously we were really pleased with that fourth grade number, and when we look back over the last couple of years, we're seeing fourth grade as a really narrow gap and widening in fifth. So that's not inconsistent with, that year is not inconsistent with some previous years. And so we are looking at the organization of grade 5 math and the content, and that's the content analysis that Dr. Marseille and Dr. Doria are obviously involved in to make sure that we're not allowing that to grow. The sixth grade as a transition year, in general, transitions from year to year tend to be a time when scores will dip a little bit. Here, that hasn't really been the case for the overall student population, but it has been the case for African American kids in the district. So there's something about that transition, about being known and supported and feeling involved and valued, perhaps, that it's not translating into the sixth grade experience. And that's an issue that we are further examining. When you look at the effect of the middle schools, we're seeing the gap get a little narrower, and you look at the performance on the Keystone exam, we see pretty good news on the Keystone exam, which is a more defined, clearly defined body of content. But we're still struggling with that achievement gap. If you look at the Keystone exams versus the PSSA exam as the high school measure now, which it is dictated by the state, we see a much narrower gap in math than we had in the past. So at the end product, we see some good news, but we see some significant struggles around 6th to 7th grade, and then we see that gap emerging pretty broadly in 5th grade, where it had been narrowing up to that point. So there's a lot that's under review in math, and we're again pleased with the Keystone part of it, which is the last big measure that we get on tests, but the elementary and middle is still needs a lot of work.
So you're reviewing the data, and hopefully you'll come up with some support.
Well, I mean, last year when we started the after-school program, we did more diagnostic testing, more supports. So we're trying it from that measure, and we'll see how that goes. We start that again this Tuesday, actually tomorrow, for this year. But we are adding levels of support to try to narrow that gap. That's not just for African American kids, obviously, it's for kids that are that are not performing at a proficient or advanced level who are invited to participate in that. Last year, our primary focus, most of the kids were in it for reading. A few were in for reading and math, and we really did a small amount of math in the program, and we redesigned the after-school program with a greater emphasis on math for the kids who need math support. We dramatically increased the time for math. So we are making some adjustments to try to better support the kids. What our goal is to really affect the change in 5th grade so that the kids are better prepared and seen as better prepared when they start middle school. So that people aren't looking at the kids walking in the door and saying, well, these kids really aren't capable of doing this work.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions right now?
I have a question. On this graph, we're looking at a cohort analysis, right? So the first date, the 2009-10 would be 5th grade, and then the 2012-13 would be 8th grade for those same students?
That's correct.
How do we have data for the 6th grade and 7th grade when they don't take the PSSAs then?
They do take PSSA.
They do take them?
Yes, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay, and math.
Grades 3 through 8 take PSSA, yes.
Okay.
Reading, math.
Thank you.
And science in grades 4 and 8, and writing in grades 5 and 8.
That's what I was thinking of,
Yes.
writing. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions right now? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it. We had we had a meeting on, I believe it was Friday, correct? Was the policy committee meeting? In which we were discussing how the agendas are set up and talking about the differences between the business meetings and the education meetings. And the business meetings have a set agenda due to policy, and the education meetings are like other committee meetings, such as policy, where it's at the chair's discretion around audience recognition. And so we had a discussion, which I wasn't able to tell you about yet, Ms. Lopero, so I apologize, but what we had decided was that we would, in fact, add audience recognition at the end of these meetings as well, because it's been confusing for people to go back and forth. It's not clear. So although it's not on this current agenda, it will be on future agendas, and I would like to invite anyone who would like to comment to please come up and sign in with Ms. Lepere if they would like to do so at this time. If anyone would like to comment, please sign in now, and then we'll go through that. So if anyone else is prepared to comment, please come up now as well and sign in. Okay. I think you're familiar with this. Please state your name and place of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Crystal
Thanks.
Blunt, Ardmore. And I just have a question. You mentioned the after-school programs, and I just wanted to know if there's data for those after-school programs and if they're disaggregated across groups for students with IEPs, African-American students, LS students, AS students, and all that, and if you're going to present it to...
And we actually did at the curriculum committee meeting, and I know you and I had this conversation as well. So we will bring that data back to
because
an
the
evening
curriculum
meeting.
meetings are in the morning.
In the
where
daytime, I
most
understand.
people
We
work.
do have the data. It is disaggregated by groups, and we'll add that to a future education committee agenda, so that we're giving a report out in the evening.
Or have those curriculum meetings in the evening sometimes.
We'll add it to the agenda.
Okay, that's my 3 minutes. Thank you.
And we'll make sure that we remind you that, since you've asked now a couple times about it, so we'll make sure we tell you when it's on the agenda.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, well, I guess with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.